Elevate your mind.
Armstrong.
I'm Armstrong, wheels on the right. Elevate your mind. I'm Armstrong, wheels on the right side.
Yo, man, it's your boy K.O.
Today we have with us Patrick McCarty, Dr. Patrick McCarty, if I may. He has an amazing background. Dr. Patrick McCarty is someone who I've had the luxury of having an opportunity to get to know over the past few years. He is a doctor of English and philosophy, and he is taught at the University of Chicago as well. And Patrick, are you with us here there now?
Payne, I'm here.
Patrick, it's really nice to hear you. Let me just kind of set everything up for our audience who has an opportunity to hear what you have to say today. Dr. McCarty is someone who has certainly been an instrument in the understanding of where education is today. Dr. McCarty has a number of programs that helps us understand really certainly where we need to be in terms of education today. And when you look at kind of where we are from our political system, it really causes one to take a step back and say, you know what, let's take a look at our education system from a different perspective. And Dr. McCarty, perhaps you can lay out for us your thoughts about education in America today. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I've always been kind of a critic. You know, I'm the stink at the party. You know, everything's pleasant, and then there I am. And yeah, I've always been critical of it. I mean, I've always seen our educational system as very much a kind of factory system. You know, one size shoe for every kid, for every foot. So when you're a sophomore, you're reading Macbeth. Well, you know, Macbeth is great stuff, and certainly Elizabethan English is a challenge for anybody who would read it. But we're not living in the same world that we were 50, 75, 100 years ago. It would be strange to talk about some kind of canonical body of text, some kind of must-read. And I quite frankly, and there's more involved in this, but I quite frankly would like kids to read things that they genuinely find interesting. Because the result of this kind of treatment in school seems to me kids who just hate being in school. They hate everything about it.
What is it that you find our educational system here in the United States to be the most challenging as we look at the global economy in the next decade? And compare ourselves to countries like, or continents like the continent of Asia.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very concerned because, for instance, in Florida, there is underway a tiered tuition system so that students who major in the right areas, the right subjects, receive rather significant tuition benefits. And these subjects are technology-related subjects, engineering-related subjects. And, of course, Rick Scott, the businessman turned politician, he's down there saying, look, the business of Florida is business. And therefore our universities need to teach our kids how to be engineers, scientists, technology experts. The only rub there is we can bribe our kids to do these things, but what if that's not what they really should be doing? What if their talents don't really lie there, and we can forget about history and forget about philosophy and forget about people who have a kind of rich life? We used to have kind of corny assumptions concerning that. We used to think education had played some role there. Now, apparently, our universities are just simply higher-order career centers, job centers.
That is,
and I'm not sure that's what we want.
That is something to absolutely be concerned about. Let me, before we get into this topic, and before our audience really gets a chance to ask you questions, let me welcome to our show our co-host Logan Delaney, who I am absolutely interested in having an opportunity to ask you some questions. Well, Logan, are you with us this afternoon?
I am, Payne. How are you?
Logan, your thoughts on education in the United States?
I agree with our guest that our system appears to be one shoe fits all. And I think one of the things that strengthens our university system is that, generally speaking, university students and their families can choose from a large number of options and try to find what's right for them. I think one of the major problems at our primary and secondary school level is that it's very difficult, unless you're wealthy, for your parents to choose exactly what the right option is for you, given your style of learning. That I think is problem number one: lack of choice and and the assumption that one size fits all. I think the second one is a more disturbing trend, which is there's been a breakdown in the family in the United States. If you look at the number of children that are born out of wedlock over the last 40 to 50 years, it has increased from about 5% of the population, 5% of the births, to about 40% of births. That is absolutely, it shows some kind of breakdown of the family, and probably the most important influence on a child and that child's education is the strength of the family.
Dr. McCarty?
How we take care of, I think number one is an easy problem to solve. I think number two, I have no idea how you solve that bigger problem.
Dr. McCarty, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, to me, it's difficult because in some ways, I think it sounds like systems collapse. I mean, there was a study that was conducted by the National Intelligence Council. It was reported in yesterday's paper, in which the prediction was made that by the year 2030, now I want to be careful about predictions, today's 12-12-12, but in the year 2030, the United States would be eclipsed as the leading economic power. Now, the response among a group of politicians in Florida is, well, let's start giving these kids incentives to go through programs to which they're either suited or they aren't, and we won't worry about history, the humanities, and so forth and so on. But the fact of the matter is, I see it as a kind of systems collapse, meaning we have government, the institutions of government are not responsive. We have, for the most part, I mean, there's a logjam right now over whether we're all about to jump off a metaphorical cliff together, I suppose. And we're going to have some kind of mechanism built in because our politicians have never acquired the kind of character or maturity or whatever it is to actually do the right thing. That seems to be almost quaint, that idea. But I think I think the communities are remarkably deteriorated. I think the infrastructure of the country is deteriorated. I think what we're looking at, I mean, it seems to me that according to this National Intelligence Council, one implication of this, so this isn't just, some kind of fringe group here. This is very mainstream sort of stuff. And their assessment is, an implication is, and the question I have is, are Americans really ready for the new economic normal to be much, much below what they anticipate? I'm interested in these. I mentioned it, Bila. I'm interested in these new shows on television where all these young people in their 20s, or maybe as old as 30, are living together. They're splitting the rent, and they're not married, and all this kind of stuff. But that is maybe a way a society, comes to justify and cope with these unfortunate circumstances. But as the world globalizes, the United States quality of living is going down.
Dr. McCarty,
I don't think the people are prepared for that.
Dr. McCarty, let me ask you this. I just recently was watching one of the cable news networks, and I saw that there will be, and that China, for instance, that China will outstrip the United States as the leading economic power before 2030. That is, from someone who grew up, I'm 45 years old. That is an amazing statistic. It blew my mind to think that I would live in a society where we were not the global economic power, the preeminent power in this world? How does that affect us from an educational standpoint? I mean, what is it that we are not doing? I'm thinking about my daughter. Let me tell you, my daughter is at one of the private schools here in Washington, D.C. She's getting an education. She was there from preschool until second grade currently. It goes through the third grade. She's getting an education that I thought was beyond reproach. How is it that we are absolutely missing the ball here in the United States where another country is really outperforming us in the maths and sciences? Listen, we're about to go to break here. When we get back, I'd like you to answer the question, Dr. McCarty. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on why the United States is being outpaced by China. Look forward to hearing back from you in a minute. Most important topics here that we have facing our future here as we move forward here in the United States of America. One of the most amazing subjects is our educational system, because really without it, I know that very many of us will not be able to move forward here in an understanding of our political system, of our government. It is important, it is imperative really, that we have an educational system that is representative of the people. Logan, can you share with us your thoughts?
Well, what I happen to know quite a bit about Chinese education because I have an office in China, a factory in China, and spend at least 1 or 2 weeks a year in China, and have been doing so for the last 15 years. And I think the Chinese have a very strong family structure, and that is what makes the Chinese students such good students. It's the strength of their families. But the Chinese also have another major problem, and that is that only a very small elite group of Chinese students really get a quality education. There are a large number of Chinese students who are not in the mainstream of the educational system. The other thing that's a weakness in the Chinese system, and probably the thing that gives us hope in America, is that the nature of learning in China is based on a history of rote memory and not innovation. If you talk to any employer in China who's in the high-tech sector, they will tell you that the Chinese are very good at doing the technical work. But if you look for people with creativity, the educational system there does not reward creativity. Fortunate in this country that it does reward creativity, at least on the at the university level. It
does at the university level, Logan, but I'm telling you that our educational testing system only cares about what you remember. Let me share this with you. We've got a number of students who are out there who take tests. They got the SAT, the PSAT, the SSAT, and I can guarantee you that our callers will tell you that the impetus for them to get into a secondary higher educational level, a private school for high school, absolutely depends on their ability to perform on a secondary educational testing system, the SSAT. Now, this is an exam that doesn't necessarily give a darn about your experience, and it only cares about what you know. And here in America, not everybody tests the same. How do we become competitive on an international level if we're unable to reconcile our ability to test our students here in America? What are your thoughts, Logan?
Well, I'm not an educational expert, but I will tell you that as a businessman and as somebody who's been through our educational system and has seen educational systems in other parts of the world, one of the things I recognize is that if you want somebody to learn something, you have to give them a reason to learn it. And a test is a reason to learn it. And the other thing is that you have to measure results. And a test is a way of measuring performance. Now, we may not be giving the right test, but if you had an educational system without test, there'd be no incentive for students to really learn the material.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily agree with you on that point, but let me ask you, Dr. McCarty, are you still here with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it would be a bad idea to compete with China if that's what we have to do. I mean, I'd rather we competed with ourselves. But if we have to compete with China, I'd rather not take the route of education honors going to the people with the Jeopardy-style memories. I mean, I'm not interested in Jeopardy contestants winning. As a matter of fact, I've been at universities and I've met other professors who came from the best schools in the country or even the world. And sometimes you discover what we would call monsters of memory, which is, Benedetto Mussolini used to be able to walk out he'd look at a speech and go through it with his eye and walk out on a balcony, deliver the speech word for word flawlessly, and then walk back in and say, now, what was that about? And that's what I see. I see it with PhD students, and I don't think that's a model to emulate. Testing of the kind that we have just tends to reinforce that, where the kid with the best memory cleans up. But I would rather have a kid who's innovative, who can think, who's self-conscious, who's self-possessed, who has internalized the learning, who has a passion about it. That to me is more important than memory. Memory is one part of cognition, but in my mind, it's not the most important part.
Let me share this with you. And I have to just bring this home because that's all that I know, and that is this. I have a little girl. She's 8 years old. She just turned 8 October 7th. She knows her birth date very well because she wants to have a birthday party. She wants to have all of her friends out to the Chuck E. Cheese or to the latest and greatest party venue. But let me share this with you. She is excited about learning. She's excited about education. What I find to be amazing is that her level of excitement is not necessarily encouraged by her institution, but rather the metrics or the paradigm that they find is necessary for them to meet the required qualifications of their institution. In other words, we often test to the material in order for us to acquire certain kinds of funding here in this country. I don't know that that's the best way to go. Your thoughts, Dr. McCarty?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that I always had a test in academia as an academic, and that was it's the nightstand test. What is on my nightstand? Now that's something that I want to read. Students who are force-fed all kinds of material, and that is constant from kindergarten on up, whether appropriate material or not. It's not simply a question of grade level. That's still one size fits all. I mean, grade level is fine, but kids are very different. Things are a little more nuanced than that. And I think that if it doesn't end up on the nightstand, if it isn't something that you want to read, that you've put there to read, then I don't think much has been accomplished. I have taught a course, and the students who were least happy with the course, least interested and so forth, can, after the final exam, walk out and at the speed of light forget the entire contents of that course before they get to their car. So it has to be something that endures. The learning has to be something they care about, that they actually want it to be a part of their lives. And I don't think
you gentlemen are saying something which I agree with, that different people have different methods of learning, different levels of interest. But what we need to do to harness that is that we should look at the situation that not one size fits all. So if we had a situation where parents, especially at the elementary and secondary school level, could choose the right educational institution for their child. If your child plays well to test, send them to a school that plays well to test. If he's a creative student, send him to a school that plays to creativity. Let the individual parents and students determine which schools are successful. And there's no one model, and I don't think there should be one model.
Let me share this with you. Our listeners are sitting there at home trying to figure out what the hell does this conversation have to do with our lives. They want to know, how is it that this conversation can benefit us? And I'm going to share with you that I'm telling you that these are parents of kids who are saying, what can you tell me today to help my child? That's what this is about. Dr. McCarty, if you were going to sit here and you're going to tell a struggling middle-class American family how they can help themselves in terms of education, should they go public? Should they go private? Should they contribute to a one of those schools that is one of the public schools that are considered
Charter schools.
What are they called? Charter schools, exactly. You know where these folks want to know, how can you help me here? I'm not going to spend my time on the air today unless I can assist these folks. Where should they be spending their time? Dr. McCarty, you've been a lifetime educator. These are families who are young, who've got kids from preschool to elementary to high school. Where should they be spending their time in terms of getting a good education?
I think they ought to look at themselves. I think they ought to do some self-analysis. I think they ought to say, well, how are we spending our time together as a family? What kinds of things are we doing? Are we actually taking vacations that have some value? There's nothing wrong with going to Disney World, but there are alternatives to that.
Dr. McCarty, we're going to come right back to you. Hold that thought. We're going to come right back to you after the break. I just want to make sure we all understand that let's not waste our words here today, okay? We'll be right back.
For more information on
and political celebrities meet, you're listening to Armstrong Williams.
Dr. McCarty, we are right back here with you. And to the audience, I want to say thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I am C. Payne Lucas Jr. in for Armstrong Williams. I have the pleasure of hosting a show where we talk about education here in the United States and what it is for us to remain competitive in this global economy. Dr. McCarty, one of the last questions that we left you with was, what is it that our listeners can walk away with today in terms of their efforts to make sure that their children are in a position to compete in the global economy? Your thoughts?
I'm interested in people having dinner. I'm interested in what happens when people have dinner. This is an old sort of thing. People don't have dinner together anymore as a family. Well, that's unfortunate because it's a time to ask your children questions. And if children not only give you their opinions, but share their reasons, and there can be a real discussion generated on the subject, you end up with much more self-possessed kids. They don't only know things, they know that they know a thing. And that gives them a kind of confidence and a kind of integrity in their education that other people don't have. We're learning separately online education. We're learning apart from each other. And when we're at dinner, from what I can see at restaurants, and I saw this also in Paris when I was there, we have people texting during dinner. So they're not even talking with each other when they are together, when they are having dinner. And all you have to do is ask questions, be curious, be interested in each other. How much interest is taken in each other? Ask someone their motives. Ask someone to explain something, to make a case for something. I'm not saying that dinner should be an extension of the classroom. I'm saying it should be interesting and fun. We've had very interesting. My son and I have had very interesting discussions on the Second World War, and there are all kinds of things. Dinosaurs. I took him to see Sue at the Field Museum downtown Chicago, and these are very rich subjects. But the thing is, I think it's important for a kid to have a certain attitude towards the past so that they want to learn history. And I think that kind of the attitudinal component is what completely gets overlooked in the schools. These teachers have a job to do, and if they don't make the numbers, the schools are going to be punished, and there's all that that they have to face. And now we're trying to gear the students up because, boy, we don't want them to go out and not have jobs. Well, what's the highest priority? That they go out and they be good people, good citizens, or that they not have jobs? I'd like them to have both, but I like them to have all of these. But I'm not want my kids to be fed into corporate America, which has no loyalty to anything. Corporate America is global, which means it's not American. It has no loyalty to any place, to any group of people. And sure, feed your kid into that mechanism where there's the absolute absence of loyalty. I'm not sure that that's in our national self-interest.
Logan, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Dr. McCarty in terms of having conversations with your kids at dinner and having meaningful dinner and other kind of family occasions where you discuss issues. But I think it's more than that. It's that you've got to be involved with your children's homework at a younger age, making sure they do their homework. Helping them to learn to read, showing an interest yourself in some of the intellectual content of what the children are doing. I think if you just look at it as the job of the school to educate your child, you're doing your child a disservice. So I think the family involvement in education is absolutely critical. That's number one. The second point I'd like to make as an employer, I've hired many people. My business hires a lot of people. And let me tell you what we look for. You may not like it, but it's the real world. And we hire people all over the world in our business. For people at professional and executive positions and managerial positions and the people who will truly get ahead, the number one thing that we're looking for is past performance. Have you shown that, you can do a good job? Now, and will you help whatever the process is? If you're a lawyer, will you be a good lawyer? Have you been a good lawyer in the past? Now, when you're looking for somebody who's giving you their first job, one of the things that you look for is their academic success. And academic success is, the quality of the school that you went to, the quality of your performance at the school, and what other kind of activities that you've done that indicate that you will be successful. I mean, we use the schools, quite frankly, as a screening device for when we're giving first jobs. But once you get your first job, it's how do you perform on the job?
Absolutely is something that we are faced with on a daily basis when you are in a competitive environment. To put your best foot forward, I find that is a challenging aspect of life. And if you're not prepared, you certainly will not succeed. And let me
see, Payne.
Yeah,
there's something else I'd like to say in terms of
please, Logan.
How family contributes. And let me give you a couple of examples. One of the things is if you make it important in your family that you show up on time for dinner, that means you'll probably show up on time for your job interview and for your job. If you make it important that your children dressed appropriately for school, have a good haircut and don't have a lot of metal hanging from them, they'll make a much better impression when they go out and look for a job. If you have kids that where you say work is important and you're willing to give your employer 100% of your time and attention, you will probably be a good employee. Those are values that come from the family, not from the school.
Logan, I got to share with you that I'm so happy to hear you talk about family values when it comes to education. And unfortunately, this country has really lost its hold. And this is certainly my opinion, but we've lost a hold on family values in so many different areas. I mean, listen, I'm really reminded, quite frankly, of the struggles that the American family might have as it relates to putting just food on the table. And sometimes we get distracted from the overall picture, the things that we absolutely must be concerned about. When you're concerned about putting on the food on the table from day to day, sometimes those things about like education or about manners or about those values that take us from A to Z, sometimes those things get lost because we're just trying to feed our families. Listen, I don't mean to get on my soapbox here today, but if I'm going to take this show, I'm going to absolutely share with you that the American family is in a struggle right now. They're at a point in their lives where it's difficult. It's difficult for them to just put food on their tables. It's difficult for them to just get basic health care. It's difficult for them to just do some of the things that are our inalienable rights, like voting. Listen, I don't mean to just kind of kind of hijack this, but I just want you to understand that it is without parallel that our families here in the United States have our focus on things that are not necessarily the very thing that are going to get our children and our children's children ahead. Education is hugely important. And but for the fact that my mom has a PhD and my dad has a PhD, I would not even know what a PhD is. Do you understand what I'm talking about, Logan?
Absolutely.
Do you hear where I'm coming from when I'm telling you that the American family doesn't even understand at the very basic core what our educational system is all about? They're trying to put food on the table from day to day. And it's unfortunate.
What's really important is the family has to realize that educating their child is their responsibility.
It is.
Okay, I mean, the school just plays a minor role.
It is.
And I'm absolutely convinced one of the reasons why Asian kids do so well in our school system when they come over here, even first-generation Asians do tremendously well in our educational system. And the reason is their families emphasize education.
Part of their culture.
The Chinese kids in New York City, they go to school Saturday morning to learn Chinese.
Let me share.
And then Saturday afternoon, they go to an SAT class to make sure they get good grades on their SAT scores. I mean, these are kids whose families say, we want you to work hard so that you succeed. And they give them the family backup to do it.
You're absolutely right, and I am reminded of the Asian system called Kumon. I don't know if either of you, Dr. McCarty or Logan, you've heard of Kumon, but
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show,